Okay, well, fantastic. My name is Michael Marsh-Soloway, and I'm the director of the Global Studio, and I'm joined here by my two fantastic colleagues. Uh, Go ahead, Ted and Julie, would you like to introduce yourselves?
Hi, I'm Julie Baker. I'm the director of the French language program.
I'm Ted Peebles, and I'm director of the Spanish language program.
Excellent. So if you are here, it's probably because you have questions or concerns about the second language requirement at the University of Richmond, otherwise known as COM2. So before we jump into the requirement, I kind of wanted to just give an overview of who we are and how we offer different language courses. So generally speaking, Ted and Julie and I, we are part of two departments, LLC, which is the Department of Languages, Literatures, and Cultures, and then La LIS, which is Latin American, Latino, and Iberian Studies. We also offer language courses through the Department of Classical Studies with Latin and Greek. And here's kind of the breakdown of how we offer the various language offerings through our three departments. So in LLC, we offer seven languages: Arabic, Chinese, French, German, Italian, Japanese, and Russian. In La Lise, there are two: Portuguese and Spanish. And then Classical Studies offers Latin and Greek. There are two programs down at the bottom, which are marked with asterisks. We have sort of a fledgling ASL cohort, and then it's currently offered through the Self-Directed Language Acquisition Program, where if you wanted to learn one of the 6,990 languages that are not available in established programs, you could do so after you complete COM2 in the SDLAP. So if you're interested in the SDLAP, please feel free to email me, and I'll make sure that all of our contact information is provided to you at the end of this webinar. So in our departments, we teach languages, literatures, and cultures. We train our students to do research in other languages. We advise, encourage, and initiate student conference participation. We mentor you in different multicultural creative activities. And we're also, I think this is the best part of our programming, we oftentimes accompany and lead our students on trips abroad. Um, Actually, in the sort of lead up to this, Ted Sebastian, you mentioned your son is traveling in just a few weeks here to La Rochelle, going to France, and it's exciting news. So there's lots of programs here that we can put you in touch with, and we'll be happy to address some of those concerns as well. So, Ted and Julie, maybe before I get into the nitty gritty and the administrative nuts and bolts, do you have thoughts or sort of introductions that you'd like to make for Spanish and French here? What maybe Ted, could you introduce Spanish, and then Julie, maybe you'd like to introduce French?
Absolutely. So one of the things I always have to tell people in Spanish, when you're looking on Bannerweb to register for classes, Spanish classes are listed as LAIS, Latin American Iberian Studies, right? So they're not called SPAN, or like French would be FREN, or was that what it is? French. Anyway, so
Yeah.
so we're part of and we're not considered, the reason why we're a separate department from model languages and cultures. We are Latin American Iberian Studies because the United States is now considered the second largest Spanish-speaking country on earth after Mexico. So we have special classes for heritage speakers, for example. So if that's you, let me know, and I'll steer you over to John Casper, who's our resident specialist. So we offer some classes that are specifically designed for people who have speaking ability in the language because they speak it at home, but may not have had formal Spanish education in high school or in other situations. A lot of times they're prohibited from, and rightly so, from participating in regular Spanish programs, right? That would be intimidating for other students. So we place a big emphasis on getting people in the right class. So the other thing that's unique about our programs, and this is true for French as well, but I'll let Julie elaborate, is that we follow an intensive regime, which is to say that well, for example, I have our intermediate textbook here that I'm currently teaching for summer school, and we cover during a regular semester what would generally be covered over 2 semesters at most schools. my own case is a case in point. I mean, I attended the University of Virginia down the road, and you know, I took intermediate 1 and intermediate 2 my freshman year. Because even with all my 5 years of high school Spanish, I wasn't able to place out. So, that said, at UR, you could potentially start from 0 in French, take the beginning intensive French your fall semester, intermediate intensive French your second semester, and then take a 3-level class, and you could easily end up traveling abroad and studying it and completing a major, starting from 0.
That's right.
That would have been difficult to do in the program that I was involved in at UVA, and I certainly had no intention of that when you know, it was just I was doing a requirement, and it ended up becoming, you know, I'm a Spanish teacher now.
Right.
I'm hoping the same for you, except, you know, both of my kids, you know, my daughter just graduated with a major in French from UVA. In Spanish, we call that traidor. And my son is about to go to on the same program, the UR program, to La Rochelle, France, which is brilliant. And with that, segue to French.
I kind of want to talk about the intensive program a little bit because that might be something that most people aren't familiar with. So again, you can't take French 101 in the fall and French 102 in the spring at Richmond, and you can't do that for Spanish or Italian either, because the programs are set up as an intensive program. So you take both of those in one semester. So your 101, 102 is 121. And that means that it's 5 days a week in class versus maybe twice or 2 or 3 times a week. It's 5 days a week in class with the professor. And then there's twice a week lab sessions with student TAs, and the students are majors or minors. And they are trained by faculty members to teach and to lead review exercises, open-ended conversation, looking at videos, looking at songs, different manifestations for each program. But so students are in class 7 times a week for these intensive language. The drawback is that it does take up your schedule. So if you have four units for your first year, 2 of those are going to be an intensive class, and that's okay, because the advantage is that you get 4 semesters of language done in 2, and your proficiency level, because you're immersed in doing this daily, your proficiency level skyrockets very quickly. And as Ted said, you're able to go abroad by your late sophomore, junior year. You're able to take upper level courses, do different types of research or activities in your second language. So one thing about the French program that you might have noticed is there is no 151. So we only have 121 and 221. So we have an elementary and an intermediate, but we do not have the 151, which Spanish has, which is for kind of your false beginners, or if you're a beginner but not totally a beginner, it's kind of in between. And so you could see that in Spanish but not in French, and that is not a typo. That's just because the programs are a little different. The intensive program is also valued at 2 units. It's double units, so that means there will be more time on task. You know, that's something to consider. It's kind of like taking 2 classes, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and Tuesday, Thursday. But intensive doesn't mean that it's the hardest grammar you've ever seen or the hardest class you've ever taken. It just means there's more time on task to get those 2 semesters done in one.
Very well said, Julie and Ted. Thank you for those details. Generally speaking, I just want to cover, why the second language requirement is in place. We deem it as essential, and when I say we here, I'm referring to the University of Richmond faculty at large. It is part of our general education requirement. Everyone who goes through the college does the second language requirement, and we view it as, a consequential, contribution to making sure that our students are conversant and literate in some other language besides English. We are part of a global world, and it's important that you're able to connect and talk to and engage meaningfully with global challenges, whether that's in literature or whether that's in sort of sociology or economics. It is sort of an interdisciplinary approach. and you know, you can conduct research directly in the second language, almost you know, throughout the course of your study. I would say once you reach that intermediate level, that's where you're kind of developing and reading and writing and communicating already in the second language. So a few of you, I saw a question from Matthew in the chat, if you had passed an AP exam. Generally speaking, there's a process. So I have a question up here, like, do you need to take a placement test? And generally speaking, I think a language placement test is the way to get the most customized, you know, strongly calibrated enrollment guidance. So if you're not really sure, if you're on the fence, there's no harm in taking a placement test. There's really, you know, a lot of people get stressed out thinking about what's required of me when you go into a new college or a new school. But really, an assessment designed to help you. Think of it as a low stakes enterprise. It's something really just to figure out what level, you know, how would I evaluate my skills relative to what I can expect in the classroom setting. And so we've got this flow chart here. This is on and in fact, I've included these links. Should you take a language placement test? We have placement tests for all of our languages now. If you've taken AP, again, here, this is a little bit out of date. I'm afraid I'll have to refer to the credit by exam policy. The latest fall 24 document can be found here. And you'll see here for French, German, Italian, Japanese, or Chinese, a score of 4 or 5 is equivalent to you know, fulfillment, and you will also get credit. In Spanish, so a score of 3 qualifies for just exemption of the requirement only. A score of 4 or 5 gives you credit. So once you've completed the requirement, you are then free to pursue 300 level coursework. You can declare a major or a minor, and you can really start making, I think, really, you know, substantial progress using the language for concrete interdisciplinary ends.
I wanted to say something about
Yeah, go ahead.
So if you've never taken a language, obviously you don't have to take the placement test. If you've never taken French, I've had people who've never taken French and took the placement test, but if you're starting from 0, you don't have to, you just start in the 121 level. And then if you have had probably 3 to 4 years of high school, I would recommend taking the placement test to see where you fall. And it's not an exact science. Sometimes you might have had 4 years of French and maybe forget a little bit of grammar, and it places you into the 100 level. But that's where you talk to us and we can say, okay, you had a pretty solid score. It was a little lower than the cutoff, but go ahead and take the intermediate level. If you qualify for an exemption, which means that you don't have to take 121, 221, or those 100, 200 level courses, for at least French and Spanish, that requires not only the written test, but also an oral interview with myself, or is it you, Ted? Do you do the oral interview? To confirm, because for that, it's just the first written test is a screening tool for us to say, oh, you might be eligible for exemption. And then the oral interview, and I think in Spanish also a written sample.
Do a brief writing prompt, like half a page.
Is where we confirm that, you know, what was done on the online exam is your proficiency level. But as Michael said, there's no real I guess downfall to taking the placement test, because it's really meant to see where you are, and there's no studying for it either. It's multiple choice, and the questions will change based on your responses, or will adapt based on your responses. So it's really you're not able to study for it, which is kind of good, because you really want to make sure your natural proficiency is what is picked up on the test, so that you're placed into the correct levels.
That's right. I mean, to echo what Julie says, the thing that I'm most worried about as a Spanish teacher, especially at the introductory level, is that we don't have true beginners sitting next to people who've had 4 years of Spanish or who've grown up speaking Spanish at home. Because when those people open their mouths, the people who are true beginners will never open their mouths. They'll clam up and you understand? It's not useful in a class. All our classes are taught in the target language, and Julie, correct me if I'm wrong, but a lot of it involves paired and grouped activities where it's really about you being on the same level with the other students in the class in order for it to be productive. So we don't want it to be lopsided in terms of distribution.
And in
In
fact, for
Spanish,
French and maybe for also Spanish, let me know, Ted. You cannot register into the 100 level freely. There's a block on
that's
it,
right.
so
Yeah.
that we approve if you are able to be at the beginner level. And if you're a true beginner, and if you're not, you're going to be asked to go to the intermediate level. So there are
Yeah.
some, some
So that maybe if there's anybody out there who tried to register for 121, it'll say requires permission. It's true. We require permission at the base level. We want to make sure that and besides, because we have that 151 course, which is like a starting over, it's for people who had a couple of years of Spanish, who are not confident in the language and who want to go back to, that's fine. We have a class designed for those folks, which is 151. We just have enough numbers of those people. It's actually our most popular class at the beginning level. I think there will be 5 or 6 sections of it this fall, right? So that, and then I think there's only one true beginner section of 121 that we offer.
I wanted to go back to AP. I saw a question as well. If Michael, could you go back to the credit for yeah, and also for Latin and Greek, yeah, 4 or 5. So somebody said they got a 4 on their Latin AP, and they were going to take higher level IBs and probably get that too. If you have a qualifying AP exam or other exam that is listed, such as SAT2 or higher level IB, and you get one of these qualifying, you're done with the second language courses. You're invited to continue on. If you're that skilled and you're getting these really high scores on these tests, we really encourage you to go on, and explore a major minor or just take some upper level classes. But if you have that, you would be asked to leave the 200 level. You would be asked to leave the lower levels if we see that you have an exam, because that exam kind of counts as you already have taken the lower levels. So we don't want you to have to take them again. You wouldn't want to take 7 times a week in an intensive class anyway. So if you have those scores, then you are eligible to go to the 300 level.
Well said, Julie. I'm just answering some questions here in the chat. P. Lydia, I hope that we answered your question here about Latin IB, Latin AP. So again, if you've already received a score of 4 on the Latin AP exam, you are basically completed with COM2, and you're invited to continue. We also had a question.
Can I say one thing?
Yeah, go for it.
When we say COM2, that's like an old Richmond-ism. We used to say communication 1, communication 2. Now it's called the second language requirement for the general education. So if you ever hear us saying COM2, it just means the language requirement. It's just something that has been in the lingo for so long, and it's phased out. It just means the language requirement.
That's true.
And then we also had a question. I think I answered this already in the chat, but about the global seal of the state seal of biliteracy from ISIS. ISIS, this is something that we are working on developing a formal policy for it. Every state, unfortunately, follows its own guidelines. In New York, for instance, you don't need to take a proficiency exam, whereas in New Jersey you do. So we're still in the process of trying to vote on a formal, I guess we'll have a policy document that says, if you have the state seal of biliteracy for states, New Jersey, Virginia, etc., then you are exempt. For the time being, however, unfortunately, we don't yet have that. So if you've completed a proficiency exam as part of your high school curriculum, I would definitely encourage you to contact me at mmarshso@richmond.edu. And if you're curious about the proficiency guidelines, we follow the guidelines that have been published by ACTFL. ACTFL is the American Council on the Teaching of Foreign Languages. They pretty much established the benchmarks by which all of our instructional programming is designed around. So if you can read these guidelines and sort of see what are you expected to do at the intermediate level. And it's all, what you've done in high school may map onto this, but it's important that you have your skills, intermediate skills across all 4 skills: reading, writing, speaking, and listening.
And it's an intermediate low.
Yeah, intermediate low is what we're looking for. All right. Question from Julia. Just wanted to confirm that one cannot take ASL as a second language. This is again, sort of a tricky question at the moment. You can take ASL. If you've taken ASL in high school, you would be essentially eligible to place out of ASL or place out of the second language requirement using on the LLC website. It's the COM2 exemption form. So if you would like to test out of a language based on, if we don't have a program for it, this is, where you can provide some background information. You are also welcome to pursue external programming for ASL and then try to test out, but we don't have an ASL program internally as of yet. That's something, again, that administratively we're working on. So Julie, if I hope that answers the question. You can absolutely use ASL to fulfill the second language requirement. We just don't have any, instructional resources available at the ready to help you do that. But there's nothing preventing you from relying on your previous studies or finding external coursework to try to complete that requirement. And for ASL, we actually follow, it's the ASLPI, the American Sign Language Proficiency Interview. It's a little bit different, but I'm more than happy to talk with you privately if you have questions about that process.
And I think a good rule of thumb is to contact Michael if you've taken any sort of language or studied a sort of language or speak a language at home that
Right.
is not one of the languages that we teach. To just contact him if it hasn't been already been recognized on your record. To contact Michael with questions about other languages.
Exactly. So that's again, I'm the person who fields these COM2 exemption request forms. There are, about 7,000 languages on Earth, and we offer programs for 11 of them. So there's a lot of languages out there that
And Michael knows about most of them. That's the other
well, not most of them.
thing.
You flatter
It's
me, Ted.
true.
But again, it's important that every language have a foothold in the academy, and if you have questions, don't hesitate to reach out. Um, I'm assuming since there aren't any more questions in the Q&A that we can talk a little bit about, if you grew up with heritage linguistic ability, again, just seek out COM2 exemption. We have some amazing resources to help you navigate second language curriculum. So the Global Studio, once upon a time, we were called the Multimedia Language Lab. But as we've kind of progressed beyond Ted, I know you and I have reminisced about the reel-to-reel tapes, or if you would go on a road trip, you would como se dice, and then you would sort of have these call and response type activities. And we have, I think, a robust offering of, we offer actually real-time communication with overseas partners. We have some exciting Fulbrights who are here on a regular basis. We had last year we had Aisha, and the year before that we had Farida. Aisha was from Turkey, Farida was from Indonesia. And our programs are always doing such exciting things. And, you can see our German play, our German conferences from a few years ago, going to the Italian opera, and placing and presenting art exhibits, and doing, this is the Slavic night where they actually, before the war, they took a trip to St. Petersburg. Now it's a little bit harder to do that, but they staged balls, and it's always amazing. I know Circle Française is always doing such, I'm always just in awe of everything that the students are doing, and I hope that you'll feel encouraged to join our really rich community of it's a vibrant group of faculty and students, and I hope that you'll take us up on the chance to work together. Ted, Julie, anything that I'm forgetting? Are there? I don't see any other.
I just piggyback on what you just said right now with the fact that one of our most popular courses at the 300 level, and this is with the professors on your screen right now, and that's Karina Vasquez, who leads our Spanish in the Community program. So Karina works with community partners all over the city of Richmond for people who are, for example, in healthcare studies or pre-med. You can work with crossover ministries and translate for doctors, for example, or sign up for other activities through her class. People who work in pedagogy, parent-teacher conferences, translating for parent-teacher conferences, or working in all kinds of different areas around the city of Richmond. So that's something that Spanish just, we're fortunate that we have an immigrant community that is a recent vintage, and it requires a lot of social services, and we're happy to help. And in fact, we're overtaxed. They would want more students coming and participating if they could. So we got a job for you if you want it.
I just saw the question come in, so I wanted to say something
Sure.
about that. I would take the placement test sooner rather than later. There's a couple of things about this. Number one, it's online. So if you fill out the form for request form, I don't know, Michael, if you have that form, or if you contact Michael, he'll send you the link. The link is only good for 7 days, and then you would have to request it again. So I would recommend doing it within 7 days. And also remember that it is a university test, so you should not be, using any sort of assistance, obviously, on that. Because we want to, number one, get the true natural ability so we can see what class is best for you. And also, if there is any exemption involved, there will be the follow-up interviews afterwards. Also, I can't say this enough. We really, really, really hope that you take your language coming out of high school, if you're going to continue with your language out of high school, as soon as possible, in the first semester, in your first year, not waiting. We have late juniors and seniors who haven't taken their high school language for 3 to 4 years, and they're trying to take the language requirement, and they're either have to go back to the beginning level when they really should have been at the intermediate, or they struggle a lot. And so it is really, really important that if you want to follow the language that you're taking, or you've been taking for multiple years, that you continue soon, because what happens is, it's like a sport or an instrument. If you stop practicing your layups for basketball or practicing piano, and you stop for several years, it's really, really hard to get back in. It's because it's a skill based. So it's you lose proficiency, and there is atrophy over time. So we cannot stress this enough, is to just go ahead.
Thank you, Julie.
Even if it's intensive the first semester, it's something that you're familiar with. And it will take up a lot of your schedule, but that's okay. You're getting that completed, and also able to explore to see if you want to continue with your language further. So I think it's really, really important. If you're at the beginning, if you're starting from scratch, you can take it whenever you want, but it's probably also good to take it early, so that if you really love a new language that you're taking, that would offer you the ability to continue taking courses or go abroad in the country where it's spoken. So I think that the bottom line is to get thinking about the language courses requirement as soon as possible.
Your senior year self will thank your first year self for doing that.
Absolutely.
And the other reason for that is there's a logistical element to it. As Julie mentioned before, there's 7 class meetings per week in the intensive intermediate class. If you're trying to shoehorn that into a class in your 4th year, you're going to be taking seminar classes at the 400 level that are usually just one section offered. And if you can't find a way to fit that, because you've got Spanish taking up 7 different class periods, and it happens to coincide with the class that you need to finish your major, then you're putting yourself in a squeeze play. That's just for logistical reasons alone, apart from what Julie very rightly mentioned in terms of the pedagogical reasons. You really want to get it done sooner, just so that you don't lose your skills, right? They do atrophy, as you said. But there's also a logistical reason. You don't want to be doing an introductory or courses for your general education requirements at the end of your career. It's not a smart move.
Yeah, so you could take right, Michael, the placement test is available now.
Yeah, it's available all the time.
Better to take it now and get contact myself or Ted or whatever person you need to contact to talk about the results, and make sure before registration, because I see a lot of people who haven't taken placement tests, and it's like the 3rd day of class, and they've already missed 3 intensive days of class where we go a little bit quicker, and they didn't do their language placement when they had 3 months to do it. So it's always best whenever there is something that has a test involved or a levels involved to do that promptly.
Well said.
It only takes a few minutes.
Yeah. If you don't use it, you lose it.
Yeah.
That's sort of the tagline that they pitch to us every year at ACTFL. I echo everything that Julie and Ted have just said. Make sure that you take it early, and your future self will definitely thank you. not only that, but I think it enriches your experience because you can kind of keep, you'll keep learning in the target language, and there's opportunities to, tap into bibliographic resources. And I don't know if you saw this picture of Karina. She does this great in the community. We have the Richmond Archive, and it's also the Library of Richmond. There, she's translating and working with texts that I think these upper level, these upperclassmen are really, it's a special privilege that they get to work with such special collections.
Yeah. You also have, students from all over the world that you are.
That's
And
right.
studying a language earlier, you get to actually, learn from those students as well and speak
That's
to
right.
them. So you're missing out on opportunities by not getting your language skills down at the front end of your college career versus at the end.
Any other questions or discussion that people would like to entertain here in the chat? Or let's see, Maria, I hope I answered your question about, do international students who learned a second language at home have to fulfill the second language requirement? Again, if you're welcome to complete the Com2 exemption request form. Oftentimes, if we have, international recruitment, I know that the Richmond Scholars, they recruit from Egypt and all over. Um, if you have second language so if your high school was conducted entirely in Arabic or in another language, oftentimes the admissions office will require you to submit TOEFL scores. So there is another path by which international students are kind of streamlined, but if you have any problems with that, Maria, please don't hesitate to reach out, and I'll try to address that more concretely. Any other questions here, folks? Feel like an auctioneer going once, going twice.
Oh, I
Andrea,
have something. I have
yeah,
something.
go ahead, Julie.
Also, you're not what's the word? Obligated to learn the language that you took in high school.
That's right.
That's something that's not a requirement or anything. Oh, I took Spanish in high school, so I have to continue in Spanish in college. We have a lot of languages that maybe certain high schools don't offer, and so yeah, I mean, starting from scratch, it seems a little daunting, but could be a really great opportunity as well.
That's actually what I did in high school. Or I took Latin and French and some Spanish, and then in college, all of a sudden I discovered Russian and I fell in love. And that was what you never know when a new passion will sort of surprise you. So don't be afraid to start something new.
Well said. Yeah, my daughter, the French major, who also speaks Spanish because she speaks Spanish at home, just got back from 2 weeks in Japan because now's the time apparently to go to Japan. It's a good time for the yen. But also, she just has always been fascinated with it. The great thing that we find about the fact that more than half of our students do study abroad during their time at UR is that the second language makes it much easier for the third language, and also the experience of going abroad makes it easier to go abroad and wherever you end up going, right? And that includes the whole world. So that's yet another reason to piggyback on what Julie said before to get it started early. Yeah.
Oops, we've got something in the chat here. And Andrea put something in the chat here. If you have sort of questions about advising, registration, timeline, you can email advising@richmond.edu. And Andrea and Nicole I mean, ARC, the Academic Advising Resource Center, they are such a phenomenal team. So I would encourage you to connect with them readily and at your convenience, and they will be sure it's almost like you will be inundated with opportunities and cool things. And I'm really excited for all of you to enjoy your time here at University of Richmond. The good folks at ARC can help point you in the right direction. There's almost, we're spoiled for choice at the University of Richmond. There's so many cool things to do, and it's important for you to sort of connect the dots and make an exciting constellation for yourself. All right. Any other questions? Andrea's, did we address everything? Are there other elements that you'd like us to cover?
Nope, I think you did a fantastic job. Thank you all for joining us this evening, and thank you to those who signed up and participated. We will post this recording on the New Spiders website, so if there was anything you wanted to rewatch, please look for that in the coming days.
And I'm just putting all 3 of our email addresses in the chat in case you have questions for us directly.
I think those might be going to hosts and panelists.
How do I fix that? Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I don't know how to do, it's only
That's
giving me
okay.
host. Okay, we'll
That's
figure
okay.
that out.
If anybody has questions for our panelists tonight,
Yeah.
email advising and I will connect you.
Thank you very much, Andrea. Have
You're
a wonderful
welcome.
evening, everyone. Thanks so much for your time, and thank you, Ted.
Hasta luego, aviento.
Yeah, buenas tardes. Bye-bye. Au revoir.
Ciao.